If you think your life is hard, take a look at this guy. Working at the circus as a clown, his duties are pretty much the same as a regular punchbag. People refer to him as the Hunchback because he doesn't even have a name yet, almost as if he is seen as less than human. He has a not-so-secret crush on the pretty acrobat Lorelei, and his interest is partly academic. Fascinated by the human body, he uses the study of anatomy as an escape from his awful life. Because of his extensive knowledge, gathered from stolen books, he also serves as the company doctor. Why these people kick and punch the only person who can treat them is a mystery. One night, there is a terrible accident at the circus. Right after Barnaby presents to the public the beautiful Lorelei, one of the ropes snaps and she has a nasty fall. The Hunchback immediately rushes to her side. Fortunately, there's a doctor in the audience. He says that one of her bones is crushing her lungs, but there's not much that can be done without the proper tools. The Hunchback then asks for his pocket watch and skillfully resets the bone, saving her life. The young doctor is astonished by this guy's expertise and says he is no clown. The circus is not the place for that much knowledge. While reassuring the patrons that all of this was just part of the act, Barnaby also watches the two men closely. He doesn't look very pleased when the doctor says his clown is being wasted and should leave the circus. Lorelei is put on a makeshift gurney and taken away. Before the doctor leaves, the Hunchback wants to know his name. It's Viktor Frankenstein, but nobody gasps to hear it because he's not famous yet. The minute he's out of the tent, Barnaby dumps all those science books in a puddle. He's furious at the Hunchback's audacity to dream of a different life. He puts the clown back into his room, which we now learn it's a cage. When Shiley asks about Lorelei's condition, the ringleader makes sure to be cruel and mock his feelings. A few moments later, Viktor is back with some magic tricks of his own. He cracks the padlock open using a magnet, while the poor clown keeps saying they might get in trouble. And sure enough, Barnaby is right behind them in no time, yelling threats at the doctor for having stolen circus property. As he gathers more employees to chase the two fugitives, the crowd is unsure if they're witnessing a real incident or just another stunt. That is, until Viktor decides to set fire to the tent, of course. Hippocrates must be super proud in his grave. Reaching the arena, they find themselves surrounded. But by the time Barnaby gets there, they seem to have vanished into thin air. That's because the clown is observant enough to see through the flourish, and he could find the secret passageway used by the magician. Now the poor man is terrified. And it's not even because he's alone with Viktor Frankenstein in the streets of London in the middle of the night. It's because he has never actually been outside the circus. He's very grateful for his freedom, but confesses that he's not sure of what to do with himself now. So Viktor takes him to his new home. Our lucky boy has just traded a circus for a mad scientist's lab. Of course, the good doctor hasn't freed the Hunchback out of the goodness of his heart. He needs an assistant, and this one is both pre-trained and cheap. An employer's dream come true. The only remaining detail is personal presentation. Dress code can wait when there's so much to fix underneath the actual clothing. Suddenly grabbing his unsuspecting trainee, Viktor inserts a giant needle on his back. More precisely, into the abscess that has been untreated for about 18 years. It turns out that he was never a real hunchback. The procedure is painful and utterly disgusting, but the thing comes off in a matter of seconds. Viktor says the easy part is over now. The former hunchback already misses dear Barnaby when his new boss comes running towards him and pushes him against a pillar. His posture is then violently corrected, but he'll need to wear a back brace for a while to keep everything in place. Viktor then points vaguely at a guest room and says he'll be down in the basement for the night. Before leaving, he mentions the roommate. Igor Strassman is a morphine addict who's never home, so there's a perfectly good identity that shouldn't go to waste. From now on, the clown's name is Igor. This way, if anyone comes asking, their story will be as straight as his torso. Igor still has a lot to learn about basic hygiene and polite society, but he has always been a good student. After a good shower and a shave, he looks like a charming and sophisticated young girl. Back at the circus, Inspector Turpin is discussing the case with his apprentice, Alistair. They go over Barnaby's account of last night's events, and we can see that much of it is not entirely true. Mainly the part where Viktor robbed a large amount of money from his safe and then murdered someone. Turpin can guess most of what's been left out and tells Alistair this could even be self-defense. However, he still orders a sketch on a wanted for murder sign. It's a better match to those freakish eyes. Good news is that they're looking for a man with a spinal deformity. They're not gonna find any at Viktor's home because look at this fine gentleman all dressed up and stuff. As his host will be at school until dinner time, Igor takes the opportunity to see a bit of London. Stopping by the hospital to check on Lorelei, he's shocked at how poorly treated the patients are. His muse is lying in a bed among several others, and it seems like they're just waiting to bury them all. The nurse is amused when Igor gives her treatment instructions that involve a bunch of expensive stuff from the drugstore, but then he slips a coin into her hand. The man has barely secured his promotion, and he's already trying to be a sugar daddy. Meanwhile, Turpin is closing in on Dr. Frankenstein. He finds out that someone stole animal parts from the London Zoo 6 months ago, and a similar incident occurred at the Veterinary Academy. He tells Alistair to open the bag he found at the circus grounds this morning. It's a severed lion paw. Viktor must have heard of the animal's death, and this is why he was there. To make things much worse for the doctor, Inspector Turpin is a very religious man who's beginning to take the case personally. That evening, Viktor finds Igor in tears because their picture is all over town. Not worried at all, he tells him to cheer up. They are looking for the old Igor, not this one. Over dinner, he teaches him some table manners while telling him a bit more about himself. The Royal College of Medicine is a bit dull for him, so he keeps a few hobbies on the side. No biggie. He shows Igor one of his experiments. It's a pair of eyes immersed in jelly and connected to weird-looking equipment. Electrical shocks make them come alive and blink. Igor is amazed, but he has a few corrections. Viktor could not be prouder of his assistant, so their partnership begins. They work on several strange projects together, reanimating different organs at the lab. After a breakthrough a few weeks later, they go to a chic restaurant to celebrate. Igor is surprised to see Lorelei there. After struggling to recognize him for a while, she's also very happy to see her old friend. She has moved in with a rich baron, but she's actually his beard, which means she's still available. When Viktor joins them, he's already wasted and can't shut up about his own intellect, so he's not a threat either. In fact, she seems to be enjoying Igor's company very much. Getting back home, Viktor is drunk enough to reveal his most radical experiment. Gordon. Made up of parts from different animals collected here and there, Gordon is a chimpanzee mosaic. Using some of Igor's insights, to which he probably has no intention to give proper credit, he successfully reanimates the abomination. And then he goes on to present his findings at the Royal College. One of his classmates is there to watch the demonstration. His name is Finnegan, and he's kind of a college rival. At first, Viktor has some trouble replicating his feat. Finnegan makes no effort to hide his amusement. Lorelei is there too, invited by Igor, but she looks just nauseated. This is not how Viktor had pictured the show. In a very mature reaction, he begins to punch and kick the machines. That produces another shock and jolts Gordon back to life. But this time, the animal is not too happy to have his nap disturbed and attacks the audience before escaping. Igor chases him all over the place, risking his own life in the process. When Gordon is finally captured, Viktor is forced to listen to Igor's advice and terminate that project with a very heavy object. After that fiasco, Igor expects his friend will come to his senses. What happens is the exact opposite. Viktor is more determined than ever to make waves in his field. This way, his name will be forever linked to something neat and well-arranged. Yeah, sure, Viktor. Adding insult to Igor's injuries, Finnegan shows up to apologize for misjudging his colleague. Very impressed by their work, the rich boy is willing to pay handsomely for more of this madness. Viktor's mouth waters at the mention of robust funding, and he promises to deliver a human being. As in, an actual dude, fully functional and all. Igor desperately tries to talk some sense into the lunatic, but Viktor kindly asks if he would like to go back to eating dirt in a cage. After a visit to the Royal College to investigate Gordon's performance, Inspector Turpin comes to see Viktor. He's not allowed in the lab without a warrant, but that alone gives him all the more reason to suspect the scientist. They engage in a heated debate about religion, and Viktor can't help but mock the inspector's beliefs, now definitely making an enemy. Igor goes for a walk with Loralee, and they talk about Gordon. She says this kind of science makes her uncomfortable, and that they should try to convince Viktor to let go of that stuff. Igor is also scared of how far it has gone, but he feels like he owes everything to Viktor. She says he's wrong about that, because even before all that, Igor has always been kind and smart. Instead of asking how come he wasn't getting any back then, he agrees to have a word with his boss. When he gets home, there is another Frankenstein in the house. Viktor's father is here with bad news. He has been expelled from the Royal College. Extremely disappointed, Mr. Frankenstein mentions his younger son, Henry. Viktor always felt guilty for the tragic accident that took the boy's life when they were young. His dad said it was never his fault, and no one else blamed him. But now he has managed to destroy his own life. Igor is eavesdropping on all of this, and he can see Viktor is deeply hurt by his father's words. Feeling sorry for the only person who saw him as more than a stage prop, Igor forgets about his promise to Loralee and does the exact opposite of what they had planned. He begins to discuss the Prometheus project with Viktor, knowing that nothing else would cheer him up. Igor says that the subject is too small to take the electrical charge, so they should make the body much larger and put 2 hearts in it. This is exactly the kind of bad idea that Viktor simply cannot resist, and he's soon back on his feet. So the 2 friends get to work, building the creature for Finnegan with whatever they can get from graveyards and morgues. One day, Viktor is looking at that same pocket watch that saved Loralee. He tells Igor it belonged to his younger brother, Henry. They were both caught in a blizzard while playing in the snow, and Henry didn't make it. Igor is ashamed to have doubted his innocence, as he had pictured the accident as something very different. Time goes by, and Prometheus is almost ready to get taste into life. Igor takes the evening off to relax and go dancing with Loralee. She finally invites him to have a closer look at her acrobatic talents, and they spend the night together. In the morning, his walk of shame takes a dramatic turn when he sees a crowd outside Viktor's house. Led by Turpin, the policemen are trying to break down the door. Igor sneaks into the back door to warn Viktor. They decide to destroy all the evidence, but Turpin manages to get in before that. Viktor overpowers him, and his hand is caught in the machinery. Igor and Viktor escape through a secret passage, and there's a carriage waiting for them. Turpin steps out just in time to see them leaving. A distinctive family crest is painted on the door. The carriage was sent by Finnegan, who is totally unfazed by their trouble with law. His family has a castle in Scotland, and he offers it as a shelter to his criminal associates. But Igor refuses to go. Viktor has a fit and says the most hurtful things to him, taking full credit for everything good about Igor. As soon as he leaves, Igor is jumped by Finnegan's goons. They tie him up and put a bag over his head. As Finnegan only cares about the resurrection technology and the power attached to it, the awkward little assistant with a conscience is of no use to him. His goons throw Igor into the river. But here's where they underestimate what you can learn growing up in a circus. With a little effort, Igor breaks free and swims to the surface. Loralee takes care of him until he's recovered. Noticing that he has Viktor's pocket watch, Igor feels bad for him and finally realizes that being his friend doesn't mean to enable his obsessions. He decides to go after him and can't talk Loralee out of coming along. In Scotland, they find the castle heavily guarded. Loralee has to distract the men while Igor gets past them. Right outside the gates, she is startled by Turpin's voice. He says he has lost his job because of that day, as he never got that warrant. That only made him more determined to frustrate whatever satanic goal that Viktor Frankenstein might have. In the castle, Finnegan is helping Viktor lift up the cage where Prometheus lies lifeless. Both Igor and Turpin make it to the tower right before the body is struck by lightning. After a brief moment of tension, Viktor and Finnegan are proud to see their baby breathing. Their joy doesn't last much, though. While Turpin is yelling Bible verses and threatening to fire against the creature, the storm keeps getting worse. The tower itself is struck by lightning, and there's a huge explosion. Finnegan goes down with part of Viktor's equipment while it all goes up in flames. Still fighting, Viktor and Turpin fail to notice the cage is empty until Igor screams, pointing at Prometheus. Viktor's excitement to meet his firstborn soon turns into despair when he realizes the truth. He is looking at an assortment of organs and tissue, incapable of interacting with a person. In short, a very dumb giant. Now he may be dumb, but he doesn't like it when people fire their weapon in his direction. As Turpin keeps shooting, the creature casually tosses his dad over the edge and comes for the inspector, who finally has the pleasure to meet his maker. Igor gets some of the lore mixed up with Dracula and grabs a stake, but it ends up working just fine. Viktor has to remind him of the second heart, and he also takes care of it. When our hero wakes up, he has the beautiful Lorelei by his side. She gives him a letter from Viktor, which is pretty much a very long apology. And this is the end. This was a recap of the 2015 movie Viktor Frankenstein by TSG Entertainment, starring James McAvoy and Daniel Radcliffe. So, what do you think of Igor's decisions along the story? What would you have done differently? Let us know in the comments below with #CinemaRecap. Until next time.